On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
I started at 28, was a millionaire by age 32, decamillionaire by age 36, and then broke at age 38. And then twice as rich by age 40, 41, 42. And that was 10 million in cash to zero to 20 million in cash. Went bankrupt. I owed the IRS money, lost everything, lost a second home, lost a plane, lost almost lost the housewife and kids in the car.
Wow.
But managed to keep that by the, chin of my hair, chin. I came up with this question, which is, how do I make twice as much money as I've ever made in half the time and enjoy the process?
What's up, everybody? Chaz, Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host, coming back to you here today with another king on the stage, Marx Acosta-Rubio. How did I do, man?
I'm telling you, buddy, I am going to take you wherever I go as the announcer. It doesn't matter where we're going to go. We're just going to have you show up and be like, Marx Acosta-Rubio.
I almost feel like I need to dance a little bit. A little salsa going on at the same time, Well, what the listeners don't know is this is our second time recording this little piece. And I crushed it both times, it sounds like. I love it.
You did. I'm telling you, you're hiding.
Well, tell us what kind of business that you used to have and have now today, because you've got so much stuff going on, dude. We need a lot of time. Let's just give it to us straight. Here, let's go.
You see, now you're sort of cheating a little because you know the story.
I know a little bit, but I got to hear it again.
So the intro is different, right? The intro's a little different. All right, so we had a business that we grew, Sun Computer Supplies, to one of America's fastest growing companies, Inc. 500, and then we made the list 4 more times. And that was on an industry that is like toilet paper. Nobody cares unless it either breaks in your hand or you need them and don't have any.
Yeah. And
we did it via sales. We did it via phone sales, actually, competing against Staples, Corporate Express, Office Depot, all those guys. And so I started at 28, millionaire by age 32, decamillionaire by age 36, and then broke at age 38. And then twice as rich by age 40, 41, 42. And that was 10 million in cash to zero to 20 million in cash. Went bankrupt. I owed the IRS money. Lost everything, the house. Well, I didn't lose the house. Lost a second home, lost a plane, almost lost the housewife and kids in the car.
Wow.
But managed to keep that by the, chin of my hair, chin.
And you've taken that experience and now you do what?
What's interesting, Chaz, is that it was weird when you're a nobody and you become a somebody, right? Because we made a lot of money and our friends were celebrities. Our kids went to private school with the celebrities. So you have Will Smith, Wayne Gretzky, Dean Cain was still a friend. This is Overstone. I mean, you name it, right? And the Wilburys, all these guys. And we had these amazing parties and we lived by by Calabasas area where the Kardashians were part of our neighbors and Ozzy Osbourne in the same neighborhood and pretty cool stuff. And then when you go broke, nobody goes to your parties because you don't have parties anymore.
That's right.
And you find out how good or bad people can be and how good some people are. And so for 2 years, I sort of sucked my thumb and thought, holy crap. Was I just lucky?
Yeah.
What really happened? And one day I was writing in my journals. I've kept journals since I was age 22. And I was writing down where did I screw up? And 2 years took me. And my wife one day came in and said, well, if what you're doing isn't working, why don't you do the opposite? And I had, I was making $250,000, $300,000 a month in net income, right? So it's $2, $3, $4 million a year, depending on the year. And we had $10 million in cash with a big house, the plane, all the kinds of cool stuff, right? Yeah. That all went away like that in a matter of months. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So I created a pyramid as to what I was focusing on top to bottom, and then realized that I spent most of my time on the things that I cared for the least, and the least amount of time for the things I cared for the most. So I flipped it over, inverted that pyramid, and said, I'm going to focus my time on this. And I don't care if I stay broke. Right. I mean, my mortgage probably was $7,000 a month. The water bill was $1,500 a month. We had 2 Mercedes. I mean, it was a big nut to crack. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, well, how the frick am I going to do that? And that was not a very exciting thing to think about. It's, you're Mr. Everybody to go to Mr. Nothing. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's not exciting. So what's an exciting question? And I had the fortune to have some mentors, Jim Rohn, Peter Daniels, and Richard Koch, we became a dear friend. And I started asking them. And I came up with this question, which is, how do I make twice as much money as I've ever made in half the time and enjoy the process? And that was exciting, right? Because that's challenging. I was okay, well, how do you? Because I hated my job. I hated my company. I hated my employees, every single one of them. They were all terrible people. I hated what we did. It wasn't enthusiastically fulfilling.
Well,
But I thought, well, so how do I get back to that juice? And so I thought, well, if I can make twice as much money half the time, that's an interesting challenge. But then I thought, okay, well, how do I do it in a way that makes me happy every day? And so I started to go, what are my guiding principles? Well, I don't want to wear a suit anymore. I don't want to go to the office. I don't want to deal with losers. I don't want to do this. So I wrote all these things. People say, don't focus on what you don't want. Baloney. Absolutely focus on what you don't want, because it'll be the opposite of what you want.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to wear suits anymore. I want to dress in t-shirts and wear, socks and, just kind of chill out. I don't want to go to the office. I want to stay at home, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it in that respect. Then I did something that I thought was really unique. I've been keeping these journals. I'm up to journal 40 something now. And I thought, yes, and they're big journals, right? They're big boy journals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what principles did I use to become successful? What did I do to begin with?
Yeah.
And you asked a question previously, what was the one thing that made you most successful?
That's right.
And I thought, well, I don't know what the frick I did. Let me go through my journals and find out what I did. And I started extrapolating these principles or rules or formulas, whatever you want to call them, that applied that worked. And then I would test them out in my new life. And I thought, if they don't give me the asymmetric, which is by private equity terms, that's 5x of my investment, I'm going to discard them. But if they give me 5x return on my investment of time, energy, focus, money, whatever, I'm going to keep them. And so it was this great process of elimination. And then I ended up with these principles that worked really great for me. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. And I knew they're working great because I was getting the money back. I was making a lot more money, but I was also living the life that I wanted to live. Not in the limelight, because I've been on TV and newspapers. I didn't want that anymore. I wanted just to be chill, be with time with the kids, right? Spend time with a beautiful wife. All these things are most important to me. Have my own time, do my things. And start making a lot more money and grow my business sort of on the down low. And then along that process, a buddy of mine said, hey, dude, I thought you were out for the count. Like, you look like you were done, brother. Like, it was like you were like going to work at McDonald's. I was like, buddy, I believed it. That's what I was going to apply for. And I'm not joking. I remember I had a custom-made racing Mercedes, and I was putting gas on it and watching the meter of the gas so I don't spend more than I had in my pocket, right? Because I had no credit cards at that point, just cash, because my credit cards had been cut up because I couldn't use them anymore. And I remember going, man, I'm going to work at McDonald's or putting gas, right? Like, that was my next thing. But I didn't. And then he comes, he goes, I'll pay you to coach me and teach you what you've done, because what you've done is pretty remarkable. And I said, nah, it's not my thing, but I'm happy doing this. I'm building this, doing that. I'm good. And he said, no, come on, I need it, yada, yada. And he was selling on Amazon. And he's making a few $100,000 a year. He goes, I'll pay you $10,000 a month. I said, well, I don't need the money. I'll take the money, but I don't need the money. And he goes, no, just teach me what you know. I said, okay, great. So he started paying me $10,000 a month. And I started teaching him everything. The Hawthorne principle, the Pareto principle, the 80-20, the Parkinson's law, the law of three. I mean, you name it. I was the saga, code of conduct, symbols and rituals, everything. I mean, how to employees, everything. I was just dumping on him, just dumping, right? Chaz, just dumping. And what do you think happened to him and his life and his business while coaching?
I'm going to guess that it didn't go down.
Not a thing, brother.
Oh, okay.
Nothing.
Well, that's encouraging.
Right? I was like, dude, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And so I told him, I said, buddy, so a year passed, our agreement was for a year, and we're having a conversation. And I said, look, I'm sorry, right? Like, I really am. I mean, I don't know what else to give you.
Yeah.
Nothing's working for you, right? And so it must just be specific to my situation. And so stop paying me. I'll even give you back your money. It's like, no. He goes, I believe in you. I said, dude, it's been 12 months. You spent $120,000. And then he goes, no, I believe in you. If you can do it, so can I. I thought, okay. And so I thought, you know what? When I first started looking at my life to revamp it, I put myself through this thing called V2GP2. I made up this formula: vision, values, goals, principal, price.
Okay.
What's your vision? Tells me his vision. What are your values? Tells me his values. What are your goals? Tells me his goals. What are your principles? Tell me your principles. And then what price you willing to pay? And then he just went silent. And I thought, that's interesting. He had his vision. I want to look like this. He had his values, the things that are important to me. Here are the goals I need to achieve to get my vision to be a reality within my values, right? Here are the principles I'm going to employ in my business and my life to make those goals a reality. And here's a price I have to pay. And that price showed up. He didn't want to pay that price. So we only have two choices. Either you minimize your wants or you maximize your skill. You can't have it both ways. You can't maximize your wants and minimize your skills, right? Either you maximize your skill to your wants, or you reduce your wants and to your skill level.
Right.
So I said, which do you want to do? And he said, well, I want all those things. I said, well, then we have to increase your skill, which means you have to pay that price. And then he asked me a really great question. He goes, do I? And I thought, I don't know. Maybe you don't have to pay that price. Maybe it's not the price, but how you see the things that matter. And so I had taught him the role of the CEO, which is three things, right? Chief strategist, chief team builder, and chief sales officer, right? Nobody can delegate when you're running a business: strategy, building a team, and sales. And we can go into that because that's a really fascinating way to look at business.
Yeah.
And this was taught to me by a guy named Dan Wurtenberg, who worked for Lee Iacocca. And I thought, you know what? There's a piece missing. The mindset is missing. And I had defined mindset as what you hold to be true about yourself, those around you, and the world around you. If you hold to be true that this is negative, then of course it's negative. If you hold to be true it's positive, then it's positive. So I thought, we're just going to focus on one thing and one thing only, is we're going to focus on changing your mindset to be commensurate to the goals, vision, values, and principles that you have. Forget this price thing for a moment, right? Because the price is relative. We're going to change the things you hold to be true. And do you ever see the movie with what was it? And I forget the title, but it's Harrison Ford plays Indiana Jones. And I think it's the Last Crusade.
Okay.
And he's going through these trials. And he gets to this thing where he's got to cross from one edge to the other. Remember that? And there's no bridge. And he reads the past. Right, exactly. Another you can see. He reads a passage and it's about faith, and he goes, and he takes a step. And sure enough, there's a bridge that you really can't see because the mirage makes it look like it's part of the cliff, not a bridge. So he walks over, throws sand, and now they can see it. But he needed that faith to take that step to move in that direction. But once he put the sand, the rest could see it. He had to have a change in belief. He had to hold true that he could indeed walk, even though he couldn't see that bridge.
That's right.
That's a change in mindset, is that you have to believe that it's there, even though you can't see it. Napoleon Hill would describe it as applied faith. So we started making these changes. What he held to be true wasn't true, and started thinking of things that he weren't true were true. And as we changed what he held to be true and not true anymore, what do you think happened to his business and his life?
Started seeing some changes.
Dramatic changes. Yeah. Made 3 times as much money in the next 6 months and worked significantly less.
Yeah.
And so I had a blinding flash of the obvious.
Yeah.
Duh. It's not the moving pieces necessarily. Content and process are important. It's what we call the BBR formula. Belief drives behavior, behavior drives results. We all want one thing. We want results. Doesn't matter what you want. It's all results.
That's right.
Belief drives behavior. Behavior drives results. So I'll get those little hearts on the thing. That's kind of cool. That was kind of cool, right?
Yeah, that was.
Let's see if a thumbs up comes up.
Oh, all right. Look at that. Wow.
I hope they get to see how much fun
We're
this is.
having a party over here.
So the BBR is belief, and then behavior, and then results. And then here you've got content and process. And I had focused on content and process, but because I didn't change his belief, it didn't change his behavior, which didn't change the results.
Yep.
And that changed everything on how we do our program. So at that point, other people who knew me and knew this guy, I can't tell you who he is, and said, hey, can you coach me? And so we started charging $150 grand a year, all upfront cash. And there's a different story when we got to that point, or $1 million for lifetime coaching to double income, double time off. And which we've 100% success rate, Chaz. Nobody's ever not achieved it because I cheat in a good way. What's interesting though, is that almost every single client we've ever had go through the process, and a lot of them are still with us, it's always been something that they think they need to focus on, ends up being something entirely different.
Yeah.
They think, I want to focus on this, but we end up really focusing on that because we don't fix whatever that is, whatever this is, doesn't change.
That's right. All right. Well, so you've given us a very wide lane here to play in. I appreciate that. The piece here that I want to focus on, which is the heart of your work now, which you just described, is changing belief, then obviously changes behavior, which then gets us the result. I loved how you framed that we all have results. Like that's the vision, that's the goals, that's what we want. That's the result that we're looking for. Okay, great. And those things are okay. And like we can picture those things and we can imagine those things and we should get emotional about those things because that's what drives us towards those things. Now we're talking about behavior though. But before we can even get there, the belief has to be there. So give us some principles here, maybe even just some basics. Maybe somebody's listening right now and they've never heard Napoleon Hill. They've never heard of belief. They've never heard this principle that, maybe things are stacked on top of each other and I should be focusing on something. It's related, but it's completely unrelated. Talk to me about belief and just a couple of core things that they should be maybe taking away from this podcast from you.
So, belief drives everything that we do, right? People say you should focus on doing something different. Well, that doesn't work out unless you believe something, right? Your brain doesn't work by behavior first. And there's a big psychological debate about this. But basically, everybody has a view of what's true, right? So if you look at political spectrum, right? Right, left, middle, up, down, it doesn't matter what side you're on that side because you hold some things to be true that you identify with on that side. Okay. Again, I'm not putting any moral connotation on this. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that you believe that. Your health is no different, right? You eat, or you don't eat, or you exercise, whatever it is that you do for your health, you believe certain things to be true. Now, you can make an argument and say, well, no, I know that smoking is bad for me and I don't smoke. But I'm saying somebody might say, I know smoking is bad, but they still smoke. Therefore, I believe that smoking is bad, but I smoke.
You don't believe it's
You
bad
believe it doesn't affect you.
Yep.
Or you believe that you deserve to die, or there's a belief that drives that behavior. You might know, quote unquote, that it's bad for you, or you might, better yet, you might understand that it's bad for you, but you don't really know it.
Yeah. Yep.
You get cancer, you're going to know it really quickly, right? God forbid, of course, right? Yeah. So what we hold to be true. So we can reverse engineer that and say, well, what are the results I'm getting now? And based on those results, what is my behavior? And based on my behavior, what do I tend to believe? Yeah. You can look at what you truly believe based on what you do. I think it was Emerson who said, what you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say.
That's right. Okay.
So you can look at your current behavior as what you believe.
Yeah, as a litmus. Okay, so the listener right now, let's paint a picture. They are struggling in their business. They're overwhelmed and wife is really at the edge and you're not giving me enough and they're really overwhelmed and they're thinking, bro, I just need you to tell me how to do this. I don't need you to mess with my beliefs. Analyze this person for me right here.
Get a job, 9 to 5. Stop being an entrepreneur. You won't cut out for it.
Yeah. And the person that says, no, dude, I'm doing this.
Well, and you believe you can do it, or you believe that you deserve to fail.
Yeah.
Which is it? So one of the things that, it's unpopular, but I'm going to give it to you because this is the Chaz Wolfe podcast, right? This is King Among Kings.
That's right.
Having a real life chat, right? Yeah. Is most of the people out there that you hear, the spouse, success, or you got to grind it out, or all these things are not telling you the truth. They're simply hitting your emotional hot buttons to get you to do something for them so they can make money off of you. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing because that is their business model. And I hope to make $1 bazillion doing it. I really do. And for some people who don't need it, it's going to be a wonderful thing. But the majority of individuals get more harm than benefit from listening to those kind of individuals because they're not telling you the truth. Now, give me an example. Do you ever do jujitsu?
No, but I've got several friends that do.
Okay. Well, but you know what jujitsu is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And so, or kickboxing or boxing. I mean, we all know combat sports. Right. We can talk about basketball or football, but I know nothing about those sports. So I'm not going to talk anything about that because I'm going to sound like a complete moron, which I am, of course, when it comes to that. But if you look at jiu-jitsu, you look at Joe Rogan, for example, or you look at the MMA world, if you're familiar with that, there are belts, white, blue, purple, brown, black. And so if I go and I wrestle or I do jiu-jitsu with a person who's better than I am, right? And they just destroy me. What do you think I need to do? You tell me.
To go talk to them and see what they did that you don't know.
I have to get better, stronger, and wiser. I've got to figure out how to improve my skill. I've got to maximize my skill set or minimize my wants. Right. I can even go, I could have beat that guy, but, I had a tummy ache today, or I farted, or, you can make all these stupid excuses, right? But the reality is that truth is found in combat. Okay. That's what Bruce Lee used to say. And today's Bruce Lee's birthday. He would have been 83 years old today, by the way. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So truth is found in combat.
Okay.
So if you really genuinely want to become a black belt business owner, a black belt life individual, you have to understand what level you're really at. And that comes by getting in there in the arena of business and personal growth,
Right.
and doing your best and taking your lumps. So it doesn't matter in combat what you think. What matters is what actually happens.
Okay.
So for an individual that says, oh, I want to deny the truth and just tell me how to do it, it's like saying, I want to beat the black belt, but I'm a white belt and I don't want to go and learn what's wrong with my technique. I just want to beat the black belt. Tell me how to beat the black belt.
Right.
Okay, get better. There's the answer,
Yep.
right? You've got to get better. Most of our clients succeed because they're big boys and girls. They know what it is that they want to achieve, and they're all about looking for the truth. Winston Churchill said, the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it. Ignorance may deride it. But in the end, there it is. The hillbilly way of saying that is, you're going to end up with the truth. You might as well start with the truth. So the truth of the matter is, if somebody has a problem in their business, guess what the problem really is?
Their beliefs.
100%. 100%. It's not about skill set, because you've heard this before, right, Chaz? I don't know if you have kids. Do you have kids?
Yeah, 4 of them.
Okay. 4 of them?
Yeah.
Congratulations,
Thanks,
buddy.
man.
That's amazing. I have 3. If what I know, I'd have 5 if I knew how great they actually
Yeah,
are.
exactly. Congrats to you.
So if someone takes one of your kids, God forbid, put the gun to the head and said, you got to make $1 million in the next week or I'm going to kill them. And you believed it. You knew they were going to do
Right.
it. Would you get the money?
Oh yeah, easy. Done today. Wouldn't take me
Okay.
longer.
100%. Now, unless you're already making that income, what's really stopping you from getting the money now?
Right. Well, maybe knowledge, maybe practicals, maybe a relationship, but none of that matters in that moment.
Correct. Because the belief gets to be so strong, so incredible, so driving, the how becomes irrelevant.
Right.
That's what makes people successful.
Yeah.
Is when the why is strong enough, the how gets easy. Jim Rohn used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
So we have these different grades of understanding of what beliefs are, but it's always a belief that drives every single behavior. Behavior drives every single result. So the individual comes and says, hey, Marx, give me the practical application of how to do it. Great. Here's how to do it. If you want to know how to do it, change your belief system to a belief system that will give you all the things that you want. There's your answer. Now, how do you do that? Well, that's what they pay me.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so inside of the belief example that you just gave that I answered, I thought was brilliant. There's a large percentage of that belief that is emotion driven, and you talked about the other kind of grind culture person tapping on some emotional pieces there. And I think we can circle back to that. But my question is here, in that example, this person has my child. And my belief is that I can get the money, even though I don't know how. My emotions are high because this is my child and I would do anything for this person. And so my fight or flight is in, my protective provider, dad, war, call it, whatever label you want to put on it. My emotions are through the roof and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to die. Talk about the relationship between belief and emotion for a minute.
It's the same thing, right? So I would say your belief wasn't high, your focus was singular. And then all your resources were called to achieve that singular focus.
Yeah, love that.
So you could say those emotions are high, but really it's a singular focus with all resources available to get it done. So I'll give you an example. When, we live in a beautiful neighborhood. When my beautiful wife and I go out and walk, I don't have to be certain whether or not that floor is going to be stable. Right? But if I'm walking to a place where it has quicksand or whatever have you, I'm now walking with a little bit of trepidation.
Yeah.
Like, gee, is that going to be an okay piece of sand, or am I going to be okay on that component of it?
Right.
Beliefs are like that. They're either certain or they're a little shaky. And if they're certain, you have no doubt in taking those actions, those steps. If they're shaky, you take those steps tentatively.
Yeah.
So I would almost say that, not that you said you believe I can get the money, your belief is I will get the money.
Right.
It's very different than that I can get the money.
Sure.
I can and denotes possibility. I will denotes finality.
Right.
Meaning there's no doubt about it. You are as certain that you're going to get the money as you are that the sun's going to come up tomorrow morning again.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's that level of certainty that changes.
Okay. You've used the word certainty, which I absolutely love. I've in the past caught myself using the word resolute. I think that they're, interchangeable here in this moment. Like, you make the decision, I'm resolute about it. It is. for the person that's never experienced this that we're talking about, what would be a super easy on-ramp? Because they're probably resolute in certain things. They just maybe don't realize it. Or maybe they've just never been presented it in this way where they're like, okay, this is interesting. Take a step here because I wasn't even thinking about it. It's concrete. It's resolute. Like, I don't have to think about this. Or the quicksand example, I just see so many entrepreneurs, tentatively walking through the field like you described, which is why all their efforts are, half-baked because they're not all in. When you're certain, even if you're wrong, there's a whole category over here is that even if you're wrong, but you're certain, there's a lot of good things that come out of that. So talk about this for a minute.
So, it's interesting because most of what holds people back from succeeding is trauma. Trauma defined as an encoded memory in the amygdala that has a response that's beyond your control. So an input either outside or inside creates the amygdala to fire up. And the amygdala has fight, flight, freeze, feed, fornicate, those 5 F's, right? And by the way, when someone takes your child, you don't go into it. The amygdala shuts down. It doesn't go into what you think of fight or flight mode. It is hyper focused. It's shut down. Hippocampus, thalamus, they're working with the neocortex full on. The amygdala cannot respond. That is not fear. It is now action. But most people have that fear response. The amygdala oscillates. And so they might know better. I'm not, think of a phobia, spider or heights. You can never, ever talk somebody logically out of a phobia because it's beyond the grasp of the brain. It's the amygdala going, we learned this response, danger. Well, Robinson, therefore fight, flight, freeze, fornicate, or feed.
Right.
And so that becomes people who are sex addicts, people who are addicted to food, people who are frozen by fear. Those who are always angry. Those are, are always running away and scared from things. That is the amygdala taking over. So trauma really does play an important role in getting people what we call depotentiate those memories, which can be done by psychoceuticals, meaning touch and things like Havening, EFT, TFT. If you know exactly where to hit, you can get that done. So there is that component we have to depotentiate because nothing will release success more than getting rid of those traumatic memories and events, by the way. It really hasn't. It just has this, wow, oh my God, it's been lifted off my shoulders. I mean, I've done it 1,000 times. Yep. It's been great. Yeah. So there's that piece. Then once you deal with that piece, the other component of it is, what exactly do you have to believe specifically to be able to achieve the success that you want? And remember, success isn't defined as the achievement of a goal, but the striving towards that goal. What's going to get you to move in that direction? What do you have to believe? That I can, that I will, that it's good for me, that the opposite is bad, my future self is important, all these different components. By the way, ADD moment. Remember that marshmallow example that all people talk about?
Yeah, 4-year-olds?
Okay. Yeah. So do you want to know what really happened?
Yeah, enlighten us.
Because it's nonsense.
Really?
Oh man, I'm going to tell you why, and you get to decide on your own. We've been thinking, the self-discipline, which I don't believe in self-discipline, even though it's tattooed on my hand, because I think willpower is different. We'll talk about that here in a second. But they're like, the kid that could push away the one marshmallow and say, I will have 2 later, did have a better life.
Yeah.
But guess what they didn't look at? That when they looked at it, it made it even more clear as to who chose the one marshmallow and who chose the two marshmallows. Guess who chose the one marshmallow over those who chose the 2 marshmallows?
Traumatic experience children.
Poor kids.
Interesting. Which could be classified as trauma.
100%, right? The ACE study. They study. So the kids that were poor, I don't know if I'm going to eat next in 2 hours from now. So the socioeconomic, where they came from. And of course, socioeconomically, if they're poor, guess what's going to happen to them later in life? Well, right? The chance of them being successful is significantly against them. Where those are middle class or upper class, well, right? Dad goes to college, I'll go to college too. Dad's good, So it wasn't a stupid marshmallow. It was the socioeconomics behind the children that drove the behavior, belief, behavior results, that drove that behavior, that also drove later on the same consequence behaviors. And yes, poor kids, socioeconomic status, like I was one of them, have a more traumatic experience, and those are middle class and upper class income. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, super interesting.
So it wasn't this idea of deprive yourself, this idea that this poor kid didn't know what 2 marshmallows was like. He doesn't get 2 marshmallows later, right? He's like, I better eat now.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to eat later.
It's interesting because, so use the example here of me or you and maybe you wouldn't classify yourself in this way, but I too didn't come from much. And I would say that the choice to have too later or delayed gratification has been something that I've had to learn. It wasn't necessarily like I probably would have eaten the marshmallow when I was 4, would be my guess. I've had to learn differently. And so talk about how does that happen over the course of time? Is this a new belief system that I adopted, 20 years ago along the way, or what's your explanation there?
Yeah. And by the way, I was raised by a single mother who was a lesbian who at one point was addicted to drugs, and my dad was a mobster. And so she left him in Venezuela when I was 4, and then we moved to the States at age 7. But she did the best she could, and she did a great job. And my dad was a lovely human being, so no offense to the water, but it wasn't an easy upbringing, right? Like most people. We grew up poor in an affluent area. So you've heard the whole thing about the alcoholic father, twin brothers, one becomes successful, becomes a failure, same father, same environment, different beliefs. So for a memory to be encoded as a trauma needs 4 things called EMLY, event, meaning, landscape, and sense of inescapability. That has to be an event. Something has to happen. You have to give it a meaning. Oh, shoot, that means this.
Mm-hmm.
Your landscape has to be vulnerable rather than resilient. And you have a sense of not being able to escape. If one of those things is not true, a memory does not get encoded in the middle as a trauma. So if you can escape, no trauma. If you're resilient, no trauma. If you give it a different meaning, no trauma. If no event, no trauma. But if 4 things happen, then it becomes a traumatic memory and tends to hold us back and give us fear. So we change that, right? And so what you've done in your life is you've given different things to meaning, or you've had a resilient landscape, or you're able to escape, move away, run away, you were able to deal with that one form or another. My brother, it had the same sort of upbringing, but he chose to do something different than I chose to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I love him and have a lot of love for him, but I don't hang out with him because, he doesn't have any value that I associate to.
Yeah.
Same family.
Different.
He went the way of drugs and alcohol and whatever have you, but he doesn't, I still don't know because I don't talk to him. But it's really what you interpretation, meaning you give it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in your control, sometimes beyond your control.
Yeah.
But despite the trauma, you could indeed absolutely positively change those behaviors and beliefs. In fact, they call it a CEE, significant emotional experience. So, I'm a type 1 diabetic, an insulin-dependent diabetic, but I was not always a type 1 diabetic. I'm 53. At age 50, I went to what's called diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA, I almost died. And I ended up in the hospital during April 2020, during the pandemic. My wife couldn't see me. It was a very traumatic experience for me, right? Couldn't escape, right?
Totally.
That event happened. Meaning is, oh, shoot, this could be the end of it, right? And now I'm feeling lonely because I don't have my beautiful wife with me. So that's an emotional significant experience. That changed my belief about certain things.
Sure.
Came back, I fired 2 clients, one paying me $15,000 a month, one paying me $10,000 a month. You guys are boneheads and you got to go. And I made other changes. So I had a SEE moment then. You've had many. We've all had many.
Yeah.
So the question is, how then do we, you and I and the audience, how do we create them on purpose so that it gives us a better set of beliefs, a better set of circumstances so that we produce better results and are happier during the process? That's one of the tricks that we focus on.
Yeah, this is interesting because what you just said is similar to the question I was going to ask you a second ago. And so now I'm going to kind of mirror them together. You just said that we can now create knowingly traumatic events on purpose that then help us go in the direction that we want to go, in essence. Did I hear you right on that?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. And so tell me, because the thing that was coming up in my mind as you were describing that was the ability to, when a traumatic event comes, to assign a different belief, right? Like, because that's probably the most simple of those things in that well, I guess that's my opinion.
A different meaning, of course.
You're looking at this option and it's like, well, this just means this, where someone else is like, oh my gosh, no, it means this. And now you have two, one has a traumatic event, one that doesn't. And I've heard a bunch of people talk about this topic, which is you just assigned a different belief. You assigned trauma, or that it hurt you, or that it was harmful. And, 300 years ago, this was just life. They didn't have shoes back then. You have shoes, and the traumatic event is that you ran out of shoes and you burned your foot, or whatever the scenario is. Okay, fine. So how is there a difference then from being able to kind of like see it coming and just assign a different belief to it versus what you're saying, proactively create trauma, but in a good way? Obviously, they're different, but talk to me.
So it's not always so easy to assign a different meaning to something. You know, when I got diabetes, which it's an autoimmune disorder, my pancreas stops producing insulin. And they're terrible at educating us, right? So I said to myself, this is a sign for me to get healthier, better, stronger, wiser, right? This is me going against a better leveled jiu-jitsu player, just got my ass kicked. Well, now it's an invitation to become better.
Sure.
So I read everything, researched everything. You know, my blood sugar, my last A1C was 4.6, which if you know anything about that, it's phenomenal. It's better than most non-diabetics, right? I mean, super healthy, all these wonderful things. Made a lot of money from it by helping other people within my coaching programs, yada, 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 yada. It didn't mean it didn't create a trauma because I still had the event, the meaning, landscape, sense of its capability. So I had to depotentiate that.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy as just, Joko Wilkin, good,
Yeah.
right? And I'll go, good. Okay, well, give me a break, buddy. Like, what do you mean? Like, it might be easy for people who already have a landscape that's not vulnerable, right? They might be resilient off the bat already, and it's easy for them to do it. But if the landscape is vulnerable and not resilient, not going to be able to assign a meaning to it. You got to do a little bit of extra work on it.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz, Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow.
That.
Before you move on here, you're saying some of these pieces are interworking together, where you might be able to assign a new, or you might want to assign a new meaning to it, but because you're vulnerable as opposed to resilient, the challenge, you're not able to, or not as maybe easy for you.
Your reptilian brain said, yeah, good. Okay, buddy, sure. We're in danger here. I don't care what you think about this. We're in danger.
Right.
The amygdala overrides the neocortex and goes, wee, 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 right? And that means if you're resilient, the amygdala does not get triggered.
Yeah.
It just kind of hangs out and watches.
Yep.
Okay, well, does he have it? Is he, what's going on? But if you're hyped up already, the amygdala is going to take over. You're going to have a bit of a boo-boo. And by the way, diet has a lot to do with it. And there's a lot of things we can talk about what affects resiliency of the landscape.
That was my question as you were popping that up. I'm like, well, how do we train resiliency, or how do we get that? Because that sounds like it would be a catalyst, maybe not the answer, but a catalyst to strengthen the others. All right, I'll let you get back to your other point here.
Okay, so no, but we can talk about the resiliency because it is important. And then the other piece is, how do we create one, right? That's positive for us. How do we create something that's a significant emotional experience? And you called it trauma, but really it's just a significant emotional experience.
Yeah.
Where an event happens, you give it a good meaning, you're resilient, and you can escape, right? Like you have control over it.
Yeah.
So an example might be, and I've not done this, but I'm like, you might want to go skydiving, right? Somebody goes skydiving and they were afraid, but they did it. And now they're like, oh, this is amazing. I feel great. And now their belief system changes. I can do that. I can do anything.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of heights or whatever the case may be. But we try not to be so dramatic with it. We try not to be so viscerally challenged, right? We try to create these little wins that change the belief systems along the way that then gives you an accumulation of what we call the Parthenon Principle. You know what the Parthenon is?
No.
Think of the Roman columns all stacked up with there's a lot of columns. Well, so a little 10% here, 10% there, and you add them up, it's 300-400%. Okay. And it's very stable.
Yep, makes sense.
So we create these little Parthenons that are pleasant, pleasurable, and exciting and easy that change the belief from one thing to the other and just keeps getting better and better and better and better. So your belief system now is higher and stronger and wiser and better. And things become natural.
Yeah.
Talk about discipline. Discipline has been a big thing. And I've loved the word discipline, but I don't really believe in discipline anymore. I believe in willpower. But willpower is a little different. Will is the conscious mind, power is the subconscious mind. All you have to do is decide what it is that you want, communicate to the unconscious mind the right way, and then chill out and relax. Do you need willpower to brush your teeth? I assume you brush your teeth.
Yep, I do. And no, I don't need it.
Okay, so why not?
Yeah, because it's a habit at this point. It's subconscious.
Yeah. Okay. Do you need willpower, discipline, or put your clothes on, or all the things that you now do that are habitual?
Right. No.
Do you need either one? No. Your point is, how do we get it to be habitual?
Right.
Well, if you use discipline, you're going against the grain. Discipline is like, I'm going to discipline you for doing a bad thing. If you use willpower and you understand the subconscious mind along with the conscious mind and how to communicate to it,
Right.
it becomes rather easy and effortless. Because the idea is force is not good. Effort's good, but effortless is even better. Meaning it just sort of goes this way, right? So the idea is, how do we create these little mini wins to change the belief system? And there's tons of ways we do it. Here's an easy example. Have you ever thought of something you believed to be true that you later found out wasn't so?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of something specific you don't mind sharing?
Oh, well, the one I shared right before we got on here. I met my dad when I was 24 years old. I thought someone else was my dad, and I come to find out he was not, and somebody else was.
And when that belief happened, what happened inside your brain and your body?
Yeah. Well, the guy that I thought was my dad was in and out of prison, drugs and violence, and I never called him dad. So there was a disassociation to that, almost like I never connected myself to that, never wanted to connect myself to that. I always thought it was his loss. And so when that truth changed, my belief now became like, whew, like I knew that wasn't me. Thank goodness, get that dude away, And I would say a big and is then I started looking at the guy who is, and it's like we look alike. There's a lot of these things that we do that are alike. We both have businesses. Like, I mean, this is just like some of the same language, and we've never met. This is incredible. So there's a lot of moving away and moving towards in my belief system at that time, for sure.
And how long did it take you to have that change in belief? Was it a year? Was it 1 second? How fast did it happen?
Well, I think that a lot of this was subconscious, right? And so if I had to define a timeline, I think that would be difficult because
when did you find out he wasn't your dad? Who told you that he's not your dad? Or how did that come about?
Yeah. So it came up in a conversation and then later confirmed through a DNA test. And so that,
Got it.
3 to
When you got
6
the
week
DNA
period
test,
time
okay,
is like,
but you didn't know until you got the DNA test, and you're like, okay, now I know.
yeah. And actually, that's true. That's when I knew that I knew that I knew. But I knew
Right.
before that because it was verbally given to me, but I still didn't believe it. I needed more.
Right.
And for me,
Right.
it wasn't the DNA test; it was a picture. Once I saw the picture,
Okay.
I found I saw me. I saw him, and then I looked at it just another minute longer, and I had to turn it away because I was like, "Whoa, that's me!" I'm literally like the picture changed. It was me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, isn't that interesting? And it took you literally a fraction of a moment to change
Yeah,
the belief.
exactly.
Okay. So why not? Do you think we can change beliefs in a fraction of a moment on anything we don't want to believe anymore that isn't true?
No, I believe that we can, 100%.
And that's exactly what happens. Is that you describe the process exactly, right? You have this intuition, I think so, maybe, yada, yada, yada. And then you see something differently and confirms what you already wanted to believe and thought, oh my God, this is true.
Yeah.
So most beliefs are changed when we see something,
Yeah.
either outside or inside, but it happens instantaneously. Like it happens in an instant, boop,
Right.
and that belief changes. So imagine if we could list all the things you believe that aren't true, like I don't want to believe these things anymore, or we discovered you believe these things, you didn't know you believe it, you believe them because you're behaving this way. And you made a list of all the other ones that are positive. Oh, yeah, I want to believe these things. And we go and we switch them. And we do it in a very effortless way, much like you and your dad in your picture. How much better would your life be that way?
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Do you believe in God?
Yes.
Me too. So do you believe that God has a plan for you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that God has a potential that he gave you? So here's your potential, son, and he gave you potential.
I do.
Okay. If your potential is 100 to 0, at what level are you now?
Yeah, that's tough. I'm not at 100.
Well, so give me a number, any number. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, that's a good question.
Thank
let's
you.
call it 40%. 40.
Great. So if it's a 40%, how much time are you going to give yourself to get to 100% of your God-given potential?
I'm going to give it all of my time. And actually, I think it goes into my future generation.
Sure. Fair enough. But you get the question, right? You're at 40%. So at what percentage do you think God would want you to be at right now?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that he wants me at 100, but I think I'm designed to be at each step along the way at specific times.
I didn't say that he's not forgiving or that he's not allowing.
Okay.
I'm saying that you have children, do you not?
I do, yeah.
Do you want them to be at 100% of their potential?
I do. Okay. All right.
What ages are they now?
1, 4, 7, and 10.
Okay. So the potential of your 10, 7, 1, and 4 are different, but shouldn't they all be at their 100% potential at their relative age and with space and time?
Yes. And so the way that you frame that, yes, I should be at 100% now, and he should want me at 100% now.
And next year, he might have a bigger 100. Okay, you got it, right? So what are you waiting for?
Right. I mean, I guess if I would answer the question again, now knowing the new frame, I would say that I'm, maybe 90% or 85%. I still don't know if I would ever be able to give myself 100. I don't know. It feels weird.
Yeah,
that's a belief I have,
and I understand
right?
that. It is a belief you have, and of course, but you get the idea of this question, right? So what we're doing is we're changing the image in your brain of how you see yourself by somebody else's eyes, which then, of course, will change your behavior and your belief about yourself.
That's right.
So how you answer the question isn't as important as how you begin to see yourself through that prism. Right. So that's just a little bit of a hack, right? Is that because, and then you didn't really get it, but when you have kids, you go, okay, now I understand what he means.
Yes. Yeah. That was a different frame. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So let me boil this down for the listener real quick here. So obviously our beliefs then determine behaviors. Behaviors then get us our results. A lot of those behaviors, what you're saying though, can be habitualized, but we have to do that first through beliefs. And then there's this cool thing in there that you mentioned called autosuggestion, that you talk from conscious to subconscious, and effortlessly, then your behaviors start happening and then get you the results that you want, really, whether you are doing too much or not. Obviously, there's the right action happening in there, but inside of this belief, or the things that we can frame for ourselves, can happen based off of things that happen to us traumatically, and we have to deal with those things. And or we can start planning to create these moments for ourselves so that we can further trajectorize, towards what we want. What did I miss?
Very much so. Well, I mean, there's nothing on that, but there's a lot. Look, it's hard to cover the secrets of the universe in a short period of time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and we're just picking on one thing. Yeah. But here's another question for you: if you have employees, how does the BBR formula help your employees? Right? Aren't you really a belief manager or a belief creator within your own organization more than content and process? Maybe not. When it comes to health, isn't results more important than what you think you might believe to be true, dogmatically speaking? So we can play this over a lot of different things. Yeah. But in business, there's, everybody wants to know, okay, Mark, so what are the moving pieces to make more money and work half as much? And the best I can tell you is it's counterintuitive. You ever go skiing or snowboarding? Yeah. Okay. So imagine you take a friend who doesn't know how to ski or snowboard, and you put them on the top of the mountain, say a blue run, and you tell them to go down, and they're about to go down. What's their intuition telling them to do? Lean forward or lean back?
Yeah, lean forward.
Oh, they're going to lean back. That's the intuition, right? You'd have the right answer, which is, hey, lean forward onto the edge of the ski or the board. Right. But their intuition is going to be to lean back. No. They're going to, right? They're avoiding it. Business success is just like that. It is counterintuitive. The things that we think work don't work. The brain has 3 parts to it: the caveman, the thinker, and the librarian, or cavewoman. The caveman is smash, grab, and it has a purpose, right? Yeah. What needs to smash and grab or run, caveman needs to come out. Yeah. The thinker, the Rodin, right? Needs to pose questions, ponder, think. And the librarian just basically archives everything you've ever done in your entire life that you've ever dreamed of, thought of, read, whatever, and just files it away. Well, the librarian is always working. Whether the thinking man or the caveman are active, the librarian's always working. But the librarian works best when both of those are sleeping or chilling, right? When the caveman's chasing butterflies and the thinking man's, under a tree snoozing, the librarian can do its job. When the caveman is active, the thinking man can't think. When the thinking man is active, the caveman can't think. So they're opposite. They can't do their thing. And where do you think most of success comes from? Caveman, thinking man, or librarian?
Yeah. I mean, the way that you posed it, the librarian.
Always. Always, right? It's Archimedes story, right? So as long as the caveman's chilling, taking a nap, chasing butterflies, not interfering, because we need them sometimes, right? But not interfering. The thinking man go, how do I double my income and double my time off? Other than calling Marx, of course, how do I do that? And then the thinking man goes, and the brain's going, okay, well, now go watch TV or go for a walk or go skiing or go read a book or go hang out with your wife or your husband. Just leave me be. And then the brain goes, okay, if I take that memory, that thing of the book, this idea, puts it together in this sequence, puts it in a folder, gives it back to thinking brain, knocks, and he goes, oh, I know, here's how.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's true, what are we most productive? When we're pushing things through or when we're chilling?
Yeah. Yeah. This makes me think of a couple of times a week. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs do this, but I have a thinking time specifically designed, and I say this out loud even, where I schedule time for my subconscious, and then I also add in the Lord to be able to bring things forward. I'm caveman all week long. I'm on podcasts. I'm on this. I'm running a team. And then there's stuff that needs to come up and out and onto the paper, and I got to give it space to be able to do so, which is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, Richard Koch, who wrote the 80/20 Principle, who's worth $2 billion plus, one of the richest guys in London. In fact, if you read his latest book, he attributes it to me. He says, he calls me the godfather of unreasonable success. The book then is called Unreasonable Success. And he says, to Marx, the acknowledgement on the back. It's really sweet. I don't deserve it, but it's nice to be included in the book. He wrote a book called 16X, in which he talks about having clear space. David Allen, from Getting Things Done, talks about having clear space to think.
Yeah.
But thinking isn't what we think is thinking anymore. We think thinking is grinding down and coming with an answer. What they really both mean is, dude, go hang out. Just go do something that's not at all work related with a question you've posed to the unconscious mind or the librarian to come up with the answer.
Yep.
And so remember the story of Archimedes? The king has a crown fashioned of gold, gives it to the craftsman. It gives him back the crown, but then he goes, how do I know he didn't fill it with, other metal that's not gold without scratching it? So he goes and gives to Archimedes, hey, go figure this out. And he can't figure it out. So he goes, I give up. I have no idea how to figure it out. So he goes in the bathtub. Then he goes in the bathtub water overflows and leaks outside of the bathtub. That's when he has what we call the eureka moment. Eureka, I've got it. Then he runs naked down the street to go tell the king that the same weight of body submerged in water should come out. So all they have to do is put the crown in water, and if the same gold, same water, different gold, different water, different component. Of course, the guy cheated the king and he got killed. But the point is that he wasn't to get to the bathtub and just chilled out and kind of just thought about nothing, that his brain could get the librarian to do its job and came out with the answer. When I doubled, that's what happened, is I thought, man, I'm going to turn this pyramid upside down. I'm just going to stop trying so hard. I'm just going to do things that I love and enjoy. I'm going to be ambitious and relaxed. Still ambitious and relaxed. Not ambitious, sucking upholstery up with my butthole as I'm driving to work, right? That's not pleasant. Ambitious and relaxed. And that's an interesting combination. I've done martial arts most of my life. When you're in there and you're punching and you're kicking, it's not the tense, tight punch that wins. It's the one that's like snap like a whip, like a towel. It's relaxed, you snap at the end. So I started approaching my work life the same way as I approach martial arts. A lot of fun, loved it, relaxed, but still intense and ambitious with a good attitude. And whenever I took my lumps, okay, well, you know what? They got the better of me, but I'm going to come back and get better. Yeah. And how do I get better? What principles work to help me become a better martial artist? This is a life for exactly just like that.
Yeah, you put a nice little bow on that for us. I appreciate that.
Of course.
I'm going to ask you one more question here, and then we'll kind of wrap this up. And I want to make sure that the listeners can connect with you. You've given us a lot to think about, and obviously things that you've grown in yourself over the course of time here. But if you could go back, maybe talk to the younger Marx, you pick the age, but the younger Marx, what would you give to him that you know now that you could have utilized then differently or better?
It's always a great question, Chaz, because, Chaz, I've people asked that question before, and I always answer it differently. So I'm thinking how I can answer it the same way. It's a great question because if I change anything, then I'm not who I am today.
Right.
And I love who I am today. Right. And so I think this is sort of, God's plan, good and bad. Right.
Yeah.
That being said, if I could give myself any one piece of advice, man, I think it'd be to be more judicious with money. And judicious with money is a very interesting exercise, because what does that really mean?
Mhm.
And I think it means, don't spend it on incidentals and trinkets, but on things that matter, and then invest it. I think the other thing that I would probably give myself is that character. We have something we teach our clients called CARE, the care of life: character, ambition, relationships, and economics. Everything in life, you can boil down to those four categories. It's either a character issue, an ambition issue, relationships, or economics. Care, right? You care. And we do it purposely. That character is the strongest, most persuasive attribute you could ever build. Never stop building your character, no matter how difficult it gets. Never stop building it, because that is the one thing that will always let you go back to being rich again if you ever lose it.
Yeah.
And we can talk about character some other time, because I think character is an interesting. It means to chisel away. By the way,
Yeah.
that's what character. It's the Greek root to chisel away.
Right.
And Jesus was right. Those are the things that matter. And I also do believe that the stronger your character, the more money you make. I think Elon Musk has much stronger character than anybody out there who's in that realm of billionaire status. Right? Like him or dislike him. He doesn't have to do the things he does, but he does what he thinks is right. And if he makes a mistake, he corrects it. It's a pretty interesting exercise to see.
Yeah.
And, Jeff Bezos was the richest man, and I don't think his character is as strong as Elon Musk's character. Doesn't mean he's not flawed, because he's flawed just like the rest of us. But I'd say, honestly, it'd be probably, now that I've circled back and been verbose, I think I've been to focus more on my care program.
Yeah.
Focus more on my character, my ambition, relations, and economics, and just manage those four things in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And that's it's a different podcast. But
Yeah, it
you get
is.
the
You're
point.
right. But I appreciate the explanation there, because even just applying the little that you just gave right there to the probably of the most down moment, at least that you've described to us, one, if not a few of those, probably would have kept that from happening. Would be my guess, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, we didn't talk about the hardest part of my life was those 2 years when I was broke. I mean, I honestly wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I think everybody should experience the emotion in one form or another.
Yeah.
I don't wish it, because it was very, very, very painful. And one of my mentors said, success is the ability to bear pain, not be a pain, but to bear pain.
Yeah.
Not physical pain necessarily, but emotional and intellectual pain.
Yeah.
It was an ego swallowing, crushing, Jerry Maguire moment, right? If you remember that movie. Very, very tough. And the one thing that always lifted me whenever I was really down was remembering that my character mattered more. And it would instantaneously lift my self-esteem and go, you know what? It's not as important as my character. And then immediately my belief would shift from, oh, this is a big thing, to it's nothing compared to this component. And then that gave me the strength to make the right choices, independent of the results.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we'll cheat and steal and lie to try to get a little result, or we'll have a little omission lie or a white lie, and we think it's okay and whatever have you.
Right.
And hey, man, not passing moral judgment. For me, one of my mentors taught me to lead with the worst attribute forward, right? The worst word forward, he called it, W-A-R-T. So I would immediately put, okay, here's the really bad part about it, right? Like, when we filed bankruptcy, the first thing I would lead with the new creditor, yep, we filed bankruptcy, both business and personal. And here it is.
Mhm.
Can I get credit from you? If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
Your business, you run it, but here's the worst you're going to find on me. And a lot of people said, that's okay. We'll give you this kind of credit, this interest rate, okay. Or whatever it was, right? Here's the worst thing.
Right.
Can you help me?
Yeah.
Will you do business with me?
Yeah.
And some said no. But they never said that guy was hiding anything from
That's
me.
right.
And then in my trajectory on the way back, I only did business with and only hired people who would be 100% honest with me on their flaws, not their virtues. I wanted the guy, look at that, interesting. I wanted the guy who said I was an alcoholic or a drug addict, or I cheated on my wife and then she forgave me, or I got divorced because of this, or I wanted the guy or gal to tell me their worst component and be open about
Yeah.
it. Because if, Jim Rohn says a friend is somebody who knows all about you and still likes you.
Yeah.
And so when you have somebody that you can communicate with and you can say, I can trust them, then everything else is easier. Right. And so and that's how you build character.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, I'm big on that because I think we miss a lot of it today. You've got Jordan Peterson crying like a baby on stupid, silly things, but he's got pretty good character.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've got other guys yelling and screaming who don't have, in my opinion, as good character. Right. And so, and most of the people, the giants of our generation that led the personal growth development movement aren't around anymore.
Right.
There's one left and he's 91 years old now, but the rest of them have passed away. Now it's about, my Instagram life, as they say.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm passionate about this because I do think this is what a generation really needs. It's what every entrepreneur needs. It's what every business owner, especially if they're Christian, not to get sidetracked, but especially if they're Christian, or let me phrase that, especially if they're religious, right? If they believe in some moral code, Christian, Muslim, Jew, it doesn't really matter, right? They believe in moral code. They have, I believe, the responsibility to make their businesses great and impact not only their customers, but their employees below and beneath them, because I think they have a forum and ability to do so.
Yeah.
But it misses a lot, right? We miss character a lot, and it's being attacked ugly right now.
Yeah.
Ugly.
Yeah.
Character tends to be a bad thing right now. Anyway,
Yeah, no,
sorry to digress.
no, this is super solid. I think that it ties in, this show specifically, like what I talked about, I want to be able to give courage to the listener because I think entrepreneurs need that. But inside of that, it's this, how do I make good decisions? And it's not that we don't have failures. I mean, you've given us plenty here today.
Yeah.
But if I can stack using my character, win upon win, or good decision upon good decision, because that's in essence what you're saying. Like, if I have character, if I focus on my character, then typically I make better decisions.
100%. You will for sure. And Ray Dalio, whom I love Ray Dalio. He is just fantastic. Really great guy. I have a bit of a different approach, which is it's not principles for success, although I do have them. It's principles for failure that I'm more concerned about.
Yeah.
So what am I prepared to fail by? I will not dishonor my children, my wife. So if it means dishonoring my children, my wife, to succeed, I'm going to fail. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to dishonor God. Right. So if I have to fail that, I'm okay with that. Right. So what are your failure principles? Here are the things that I will not sacrifice. Everything else is open.
Yeah.
So if a business deal comes in, it does not affect your child, your children, your wife, your relationship with God, or your own honesty and integrity, then great. Let's see what it's about. Right. We'll talk about that. But if it affects those things that you hold valuable, right, then don't do it. I don't wake up every morning going, gee, I got to go for a walk today, and I hope I don't pick up the dog poop and eat it. Right? You don't have to use willpower to go, don't eat that dog poop, don't eat that dog poop. It never enters your mind. Yeah. That's good decision making when you have a certain set of values that any violation doesn't even enter your mind. There's no debate. You're not out in the bars drinking with your buddy going, hey man, I'm a married man, but should I go ahead on that chick? Like, if that enters your thought, that's not a clear value for you. I'm not putting connotation morally on that. I'm just saying it's not a good value for you. But if it doesn't enter, you might go, oh, she's an attractive woman or an attractive guy, and that's the end of it because you're a human being. But if the thought doesn't come in about, oh, I'm going to take action on that, then that piece for you is solid. Yeah. That's how I view most of my life, right? I have these lines that just, I don't even think about it because there's no way I would cross them. Not that by the way, the reason I failed originally was because I didn't have those lines. Remember we talked about being, you're 1, 2, or 3 moves away from greatness or disaster, not 100, just 1, 2, or 3. Right. I had no father. I had no real life mentor at the time. So I didn't have this ability to decide, so I made some choice. Oh, that was a bad choice. That's a bad choice. Okay, now I'm broken and bankrupt, right? It didn't take very long. It was pretty quick.
Yeah. No, I think that you're spot on. And you didn't paint it in a picture of fear of 3 steps this way, 3 steps that way. Like, oh, I got to stay on the skinny and the narrow. It just is bad decision making stacked on bad decision making. It doesn't take too many layers of bad decision making to lose it. To that point, I think it makes it even more important for what you're saying. These are the things over here that I value. So therefore, I make decisions in a specific way, and I don't even have to make decisions in certain ways because I've already made, like you said, the clarity or the resolution of this is not even a question. This is my belief. Therefore, this is my behavior. Therefore, these are my results.
That's the result. And it's easier that way. Much easier. It's you know, Steve Jobs used to dress every day in the same outfit. So he had less decision making to do. We wake up every morning, we have certain lines that we don't cross. What if you expand those lines and make it more conscious? Less decision making.
Yeah.
Easier life.
Exactly.
Brain power on the things that matter to make you more money and have more fun.
Yeah.
You don't have to decide if you're going to eat a dog when you go out in the street.
Right.
If you do, you got problems.
Yeah. That's a different podcast. We are not helping you there.
It's not at all. Not even a little
Marx, this has been incredible. We could easily go for another few hours. How can the listener find you? One, if they are an entrepreneur and they want to follow you or pick your brain, go to your website, that type of thing. Or two, maybe they are a successful entrepreneur and they fit the avatar of somebody who wants to go to the next level already up there, and they want to engage with you as a coach. How can they find you that way?
Email me. Most people don't know who I am. Sort of we keep it that way because it keeps my life to be, I'm already financially independent.
Sure.
I don't need to make the money, right? But they can email me, marx@callmarx.com, marx@callmarx.com, and just email me. And I reply to every single email. I eat my own dog food. I don't work very hard. I make a lot of money. I have a great life. Most people don't bug me. But if they want to have a question or book or they want to chat with me, I'm happy to connect with them. I love meeting people, no matter what. I do love that.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun for me.
We'll put all that in the show notes as well. Again,
Super.
You've been incredible. Thank you for being here. Blessings to you, your family, as you've
Blessings to you,
described. Thank you for being here, good sir.
Thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.